in a particular way you have to be taught. So therefore we divided into 3 pathshalas. We will cover one subject. So please participate, learn, and become more productive and more wise practitioners. So now we are now going to touch 12 o'clock, just 3 minutes to go. So I would like to, we are extremely fortunate. हमने इसकी marketing और advertising last week में कर रहे, तो आप लोगों को पता है कौन आने वाले हैं. It is indeed our pleasure and honor to have somebody of the stature of Mr. Abhinav Bindra to be amongst us. He is a champion, no doubt. He's a person who has excelled in a field when you don't have too many people around you, who are experts and who can guide you. तो आप कभी अकेले होते हैं, फिर भी आपका अगर हौसला बड़ा होता है कि मुझे करके जीतना है और वर्ल्ड चैंपियन बनना है, भले मेरे को उसका सपोर्ट इतना ना भी मिले, तो उनसे बेहतर एग्जाम्पल कोई नहीं है. जब इंडिया में हम ओलंपिक्स में तो मतलब वी प्ले क्रिकेट वेरी वेल, पर जब ओलंपिक्स आती है तो मुझे तो बचपन से याद है कि हमको मेडल बहुत कम मिलती है और हम सब बोलते हैं कि इंडिया इतनी बड़ी कंट्री है, so many population, India is such a large population, why can't they win medals? And therefore when Abhinav Bindra won a gold medal, forget about a medal, Olympic medal itself is a big thing, but when you won a gold medal, I think for every Indian ये नाम तो दिमाग में permanently बैठ गया है. Because if I was an American, तो वहाँ पे अगर आप बताओगे तो किसने गोल्ड मेडल जीता है, तो इतने लोगों ने जीता है कि नाम भी याद रखना मुश्किल है. But from India, I think it was a thing that permanently every Indian has it in his mind that he made all of India so proud. So let me just tell you a little bit about him. थोड़ा बहुत पढ़ना तो पड़ता है क्योंकि इनका जो success है, there are too many facts in this और हर चीज याद नहीं रहती है. So Abhinav Bindra's journey to become the first and only Indian to win an individual Olympic gold and the first Indian to win a world championship gold in air rifle shooting is an example of a single-minded quest for perfection. And I remember reading his interviews and whatever he was talking afterwards that we do not have the infrastructure in India, and he has worked very hard to build that infrastructure so that we have more champions. And I think after Abhinav Bindra won the gold in the subsequent Olympics, our performance also has improved a lot. His victory at Beijing was not just a personal one, it broke a sporting barrier that had haunted the nation for a century. Born in Dehradun, he has won over 150 individual medals in a career that lasted over 20 years. His last Olympics were in Rio in 2016, where he finished 4th, recipient of Arjuna Award, and the youngest recipient of Rajiv Gandhi Khel Ratna Award. Mr. Bindra was also conferred with India's 3rd highest civilian award, the Padma Bhushan, in 2009. Post his retirement from active sport, he founded the ABTP Facilities for Physical Excellence under Abhinav Futuristics Private Limited. Over 5,000 athletes and medical patients have benefited from the 6 centers across the country: Pune, New Delhi, Gurgaon, Mohali, Bangalore, and Bhubaneswar. Through the Abhinav Bindra Foundation, Indian grassroots athletes are granted scholarships to train at the center and grow under the technology. So this is what मैं ज़्यादा time नहीं लेना चाहता हूँ, नहीं तो I can keep reading a lot more. I will like to invite, of course, this session is called Khaas Baat with MisterBond. और MisterBond हमारे साथ जुड़ने के बाद 4 चांद लग गई है और पाठशाला में. और MisterBond को तो सब जानते हैं, वो अभी ही इज पार्ट ऑफ पाठशाला, तो अभी वो होस्ट बन चुके हैं पाठशाला का, तो मैं उनका भी इंट्रोडक्शन देना नहीं चाह रहा हूँ. So let me just invite MisterBond and to have a fantastic conversation with Mr. Abhinav Bindra to inspire us how to become excellent in whatever we do, our practice, whether we have support or we don't have support, how individually we can rise. So thank you so much, Mr. Bindra, to be with us. It's indeed an honor. Sir, it's all yours, Sunil Jhaveri ji.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dharamji. Good afternoon. Welcome to Abhinav Bindra, Padma Bhushan Abhinav Bindra. This is really an honor and a privilege to have you on our show. And first and foremost, let me say a very happy new year to all of the viewers who are viewing across the country as well as across many nations, because this invitation has gone viral. We are starting our new year with big bang, literally and figuratively, because we have a shooter, Abhinav Bindra, and Dharamji has just given a beautiful introduction. And frankly speaking, he needs no introduction either to the Indian audiences or to international audiences also. But today I'm going to request him to go down memory lane and share his triumphs, his failures, his joys, his pains, and how can we imbibe some of the lessons from his life journey and his professional journey, and then take our journey forward also. Welcome, Abhinav.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Happy New Year to you and to all your viewers. And, thank you for having me, and great pleasure to be here with you. And I'm looking forward to the conversation that we're going to have.
Absolutely. I think the audiences across are really keenly and eagerly waiting for our conversation. So I'm going to ask you to go down memory lane, as I just said. You know, you started into this sport at a very young age. At the age of 15, you actually participated in Commonwealth Games. First and foremost, how did you think of air rifle shooting as a sport? Because most of the kids in India will either think of playing, cricket or hockey. So what made you think of this, and
Yeah,
what was your
yes.
journey, the initial journey of getting into this sport?
Well, it is a kind of a funny story because I started out as a very reluctant athlete. As a young boy, as a young child, as a young kid, I was a fat boy whose only talent in school, I was in boarding school, and my only talent there was to miss physical education classes at school. In
Wow.
fact, as a child, I hated sport, and I was not very happy in boarding school. And although I used to receive a letter every day from my father, which had one commonality in those letters, was that I must play some sport. But of course, I did not really listen to him. And then I finally got out of boarding school and joined a day school in Chandigarh. And I needed something to do, and I needed a pastime. So I was introduced to the sport of shooting. So I went to my first coach for my first formal shooting session. His name is Colonel Dillon, and I fell in love with the sport from day one, because to be successful in my sport, I had to stand still, and I had no running around required in it. So that was the initial reason why I actually got into the sport. But it was something which is definitely my weak point. But of course, in the years to come, it became a strength. And I have had it lasted 22 years, which is a fairly long period of time. And now that I can look back at my career a little bit more dispassionately, because I have sort of exited my investment to say, I can look at it more dispassionately, and I look back at it not at the outcome, which was a gold medal that I won, but I look back at it, and what I cherish is what I learned in the process and the person I became in the process. That to me holds the most amount of value in my sporting career. The journey that I had is what I cherish, the ups and downs that I faced and encountered, and tried to become the best version of myself every single day. That is what I look back with fondness. And those are wonderful lessons that I learned. Those are wonderful memories that I have, which will remain a part of my life for the rest of my life. Of course, the medals are great, but they are just, at the end of the day, outcomes which hang on a wall. And to bring life to them, it is about leading a life in a particular way. And sport, I've been fortunate to learn so many values through sport, which I
I'm
continue
sure I'm going to
I
ask you these
continue to
questions
value.
also.
Yes.
Some of the values which you imbibed and which you learned in this sporting career of yours. But before we delve into that, I would like to ask you, what was the contribution of your mentors and your coaches in your life journey and this professional journey? Because most of the times people think that I don't need a coach, I don't need a mentor, but I know personally for a fact that I needed mentorship and a guidance and a coaching throughout my career. And I have been a passionate student, and I'm a lifelong student. I continue to learn even now. I'll be 60 next year, but I still continue to learn from my different paths, wherever I can gather this knowledge and experiences of the others. So what according to you was a contribution from your coaches and your mentors?
I had tremendous amount, their contribution was tremendous in my career. There was a point of time in my career where pre-Beijing, for example, I had 9 people in my support staff, and I was never shy of asking for help when I needed it. It was about finding the right team. It was about finding the people who would be with me in good times and in bad, who would not judge me for just my outcomes, but who would love me for the person that I was. So that was the bond that I was able to build with these individuals. And I have to say, there were varied personalities that I worked with at a certain period of time. There was a period of time where I worked with a set of coaches who I loved, and simultaneously I worked with a coach who I never got along with. But I decided that I continued to work with him because the man was very tough on me. He was my biggest critic. He kept telling me things that I did not want to hear. And although those things always sounded harsh and always created resistance in me because
So
they
you
always
took them
took
as
me.
bitter pills which are required by any patient? Is that the way you took it?
No, I did
Criticism?
not take it as it was not about just criticism. It was constructive criticism, but it was also about having an open mindset. And it was about having a mindset where you would be open to hear another perspective, because he was providing another perspective to a certain situation. And sometimes when another perspective takes you out of your own comfort zone is presented to you initially, it just creates a great amount of resistance in you. But when you think about it for a couple of days and you cool down a little bit, it suddenly starts to make a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
And
Because
that is
we as Indians, unfortunately, are not used to taking criticism positively. And as you rightly put it, it was a constructive criticism only for the benefit of your performance and your enhancement only.
absolutely correct. And it was a relationship which always challenged me. It was a relationship which always teased me. But when I look back, I have to say it was one of my most valuable relationships, because it brought the best out of me. It took me to the edge. It pushed me to the edge, and it really brought that 1% over the others. What one is looking at, when you are in a competition such as an Olympic Games, the competition is going to be immense, and you're going to be it is that 1% which distinguishes between winning and not and coming 10th or 15th, and it is about getting those small details right. No detail is small enough to ignore, and that I think was a very valuable lesson that I learned through my relationships with my coaches. But I think it was I built a team around me who I knew had their best intentions in mind. They wanted the best for me. And once I was convinced on them, I took their criticism and I took their points very sportingly. I was very open-minded, very to advice, very open-minded to other perspectives. Maybe I did not follow each one of them, but each one of those different perspectives. But I always gave them a patient try. I always
due consideration basically before rejecting.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
What, according to you, are 3 major milestones in your personal life or your professional life? 3 major milestones, if you can think of.
Well, I think milestones are they can be defined as outcomes, but I think I can easily list out that I won a gold medal at the Olympic Games. It was a great milestone for me, etc.,
That is a great
etc.
milestone from the country's point of view, Abhinav.
Yes,
so of course it's a personal
but I think
milestone.
yes, I think those are important milestones, and they were very important milestones to me as well. But I think it was just my journey. You have to understand my journey a little bit to really understand what my biggest milestone was. I was an athlete who was always assailed by a lot of self-doubt. I never had the natural flair of an athlete, as I spoke first answer itself. I was not a naturally gifted athlete. I was not a confident person. I was always assailed by a lot of anxiety and self-doubt. And I always had to encounter in a sporting competition, you need a certain amount of belief and confidence that, which is often talked about. But I always struggled with it. so I started to not look at the self-belief theory anymore. And what I started to really go after instead of self-belief and self-confidence was my journey began to achieve self-respect. And that self-respect was only achieved when I knew that I had given it my absolute all. I did everything humanly possible to prepare for the Olympic Games with all honesty, being brutally honest to yourself. When I had to look myself in the mirror every day and ask myself the question, have I given it my best today to prepare? And if the answer was yes, I had a good night's sleep. And through this journey is what I achieved my own self-respect. And when I achieved my self-respect, it was one of the most powerful feelings that I ever gained in my life. That sense of security that I had going into an Olympic Games, knowing that I have done my absolute best and that I was a winner in my own eyes, even before I shot the first shot at the Olympic Games. That to me was my biggest milestone of my career and of my life so far.
So I think you've often said that you have given more importance to self-respect than self-confidence. You've often said that. So is that the reason what you've just mentioned?
Yes, because I really struggled with self-belief. I just did not have it. And I know that many people struggle with it, but just don't sometimes have the courage to acknowledge it. But it is okay not to be okay sometimes. But when you do have that self-respect from you, it is very powerful. And I believe that when you do gain your own self-respect, that is true confidence. It's maybe not very vocal in nature, but it's inner confidence that you have as a person, which comes from deep within your being. And that I think is something in difficult moments in life, which everybody will face. That is what you bring out your resilience from. That is where you actually draw your strength from when you will be stuck in a crisis. And believe me that you will be stuck in a crisis at some point or the other.
Absolutely. No, but amazing. This is absolutely a different perspective from what generally people believe, that self-confidence is more important than self-respect. But the self-respect in your own eyes is what brings the self-confidence, is what I would like to take away as a takeaway from this. In 2004 Summer Olympics, you established a new world record during qualifying round. But then finally you ended up 8th in the finals in that year. So how disappointing was that? How frustrating was that? Did you think of giving up, or did that egg you on to do better in the next Olympics and so on and so forth? So what were your thoughts around at that time?
Yeah. Yes, and this was probably one of a big moment in my life because it was my biggest failure in my life. At the grandest arena in sport, I make an Olympic final, breaking an Olympic record, pretty much primed to win a medal that day. And to win a medal that particular day, I had to shoot 10 very ordinary shots, really. But I just happened to shoot the 10 worst shots of my life in that Olympic final. Of course, it was heartbreaking. It was very, very disappointing. A few days after that Olympic final, it came to light that the floor that I was standing on had a loose tile underfoot, which reverberated every time I picked up my rifle. So it was so heartbreaking to me.
Something absolutely beyond your control.
It was something totally beyond my control. And it was something which, of course, there was huge amount of disappointment. I felt bitter. I felt saddened, and all of that, those emotions which normally come with failure and disappointment. But this failure taught me one of the greatest lessons of my life. The greatest lesson that it taught me was learning to detach yourself from outcomes and really be focused on the process. And that is how my life changed. That is how my attitude towards my next Olympic journey changed and started, that I was totally detached from the outcome. Of course, I wanted a gold medal. It was already in my mind, but I did not need to remind myself and focus on that.
What I'm hearing you say is that basically, the same karma theory or the Bhagavad Gita, apne karm karte raho, outcome jo hoega, at least be true to what you are trying to do.
You have to. I was totally committed to the process. I think it was being very, very process oriented, and of course, leaving nothing to chance. I started becoming obsessive about every little detail. The first thing that I went when I started training again after the Athens Olympics was to install a loose tile in my home range in Chandigarh,
Wow.
so that I could, even if it happens again, I'm prepared for a certain thing.
Amazing,
I went,
amazing. That is.
I went into many details and many small things that I did, which to the onlooker may not make any sense, but it was every little detail counts. I'll give you a few examples because they are. I would like to explain this a little bit. For example, I went to South Africa and I got my brain mapped, and I trained and for about 2,000 shots, and then they could see what sort of a brain activity I had when I was shooting really well, and then I could actually, with the use of technology, train myself to be in that state of mind when I was shooting. Because I had this whole flaw incident in Athens. I soled my shoes, my specific shooting shoes, with rubber, which is used on soles on the tires, Ferrari tires, because they had the most anti-skid element to it. I went into every single detail to get my mind, my body, my technique, and my equipment prime. At that time, if you remember, before Beijing, the best ammunition that was made was by the Chinese, but the Chinese never sold it to anybody else. So I managed to almost smuggle some in. So I had to become almost a smuggler of sorts, but I managed to get them through a colleague in Hong Kong. But it was about trying to do every little thing, even if
So
it would help me by
what did your brain mapping
0.0001.
of 2,000 shots? What was the outcome? If you can share that brain mapping which you
The
did.
outcome was,
Which were the
yes,
best shots at that time? What was the mental mind frame of yours?
You have to learn how to silence it, and you have to learn how to silence your your inner self-talk while you're actually performing. Because when you're actually performing, you have to perform instinctively. You have to go by your gut to a great degree in moments of this thing, and you have to be trained well enough. You cannot, and you have to stop that chatter that sometimes is very disturbing when you're trying to focus on something.
I'm
So
going
of
to
course
come to that
is,
also. I'm going to come to that also. But Abhinav, just to tell the audience here that you bounced back. You concentrated on the process rather than the outcome, and you were true to your process, your self-belief, your self-respect, etc. Many people, after their initial failures, they tend to give up. They do not try to adapt. They do not try to improvise. They do not try to reinvent themselves. What is the message for people like that?
well, I think you have to, again, it is the game of self-respect. If you just give up, then you're also giving up on your self-respect. But you have to keep trying. There is no, if you fail once, you get up again and you get back on the saddle and you got to try again. You have to keep trying. And I think just giving up, that is the biggest failure. Failing is not a big deal. Sometimes failure is almost a stepping stone to success. And you have to learn the lessons that failure bring in. Learn the mistakes that you may have made, or the errors that you may have made. Learn from them, and you have to learn to let go of the unwanted baggage that comes with failure. And when you're able to do that, you learn how to move on. And failure is sometimes tough. I know it is very disappointing, and sometimes failures. It's a failure in sport can sometimes not even be equated to, there are bigger things in life than sport. At the end of the day, my sporting achievements are nice and wonderful, but I was not saving lives here. And there are bigger elements in life as well. And, I truly understand that, sometimes failure is very hard to absorb. But I would only like to say one thing, and I would just like to advise everybody on one thing, is the practice of acceptance. I think when we are faced with a difficult situation, human tendency is to resist a situation. Even if when we fail, we are so cowed down by the disappointment of it because we're just not able to accept it. There is so much resistance we bring out from a certain situation. But the moment we learn to accept wholeheartedly, if you've failed, you have failed, and the moment you learn to truly accept it, you're just able to move on, and get back to your goals much more efficiently than otherwise. So my only
Absolutely. I
advice
mean,
would be,
I've also faced failures twice in my life, and absolutely through extraneous circumstances, nothing to do with me or my knowledge domain or my expertise. Twice, because of the regulatory changes, our business became zero. In 1992, post Harshad Mehta scam, and 2013 when Direct was introduced. So the business became zero after 25, 30 years of doing business very conscientiously, diligently, etc. We had to bounce back. The tendency of people is to start cribbing, start blaming the environment, start blaming the regulators, and so on and so forth. I also had the same choice, but I chose the path of moving on, learning from our experiences. Our experiences and our knowledge is not going to be taken away by anybody. So it is up to us as to how we wish to rise back. This entirely in the hands of the person who may have faced such failures. In 2000, before 2006 ISSF World Shooting Championship, you had to undergo a back surgery. What were your thoughts during that back surgery? Did you think that your career is over? And after that, you went on to win 2006 championship also, and I think 2008 the Olympic gold medal. So, what were your thoughts during that phase of your life when you had to undergo this surgery? I'm sure you must be on bed rest for quite some time. You could not have maybe practiced also during that phase of your life. So, what did you think, and how did you bounce back?
yeah, an athlete's life is full of uncertainty. Just like probably the way when your business after the scam, when your business fell down, and or when the markets fall, there's a lot of uncertainty that one is facing. An athlete's life, that is athlete's life every day, because we continue to put in a lot of effort. We put our life, blood and sweat and tears into an endeavor, but we are very uncertain what result it's going to get us, because results in sport can never be scripted. You really don't know how you're going to be able to perform, how your competition is going to do. So there's tremendous amount of uncertainty in an athlete's life. And injuries, of course, bring in a greater degree of uncertainty, because there are question marks on your future if you can actually even do this again. Of course, it was a tough moment in my career. But again, it was about focusing on what was supposed to be done at that moment. At that particular moment, I, of course, was not able to train the way I was normally was training, but the priorities changed, and the priority was to get healthy again. The priority was to focus on recovery and optimize my body so that it is in a greater shape that when I do come back. So it is about changing focus, which sometimes circumstances force you to change. I was focused on a goal of the Olympics, and suddenly I had a circumstance which was disruptive in nature. But it was again about accepting the nature, changing your short-term goals quite quickly, focusing on what was required to get your train back on the rail.
So basically, get back step by step by
yes.
Constantly following a procedure which was required to first of all recover
Absolutely.
out of your surgery, and then slowly and steadily get back onto your shooting range, I would presume.
You have to just realign your goals. You have to realign your goals.
So make them into shorter goals. Instead of that long-term goal, you had to redo shorter goals, achieve those step by step, and then look
Absolutely.
at the bigger picture thereafter. Is that correct?
And you need that ability. Absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And you have to have the ability to adapt to situations. Performance in sport and performance in life almost is all about adaptability. The sooner you're able to adapt to situations and circumstances, I think the chances for you to succeed will just be higher.
Sure. Now, did you at any point in time, irrespective of injuries or irrespective of some personal tragedies in your life, have to participate in some of the sporting events just because of that spirit of the show must go on? Did you face any of these challenges or during your entire career as a sports person?
Yes, of course. I mean, there were moments where I had personal strat. My grandmother had passed away, and I had to continue to compete. Those were personal issues that I faced in certain moments of my career. But you have to see what your priorities are at that point of time. If you have a job to do, you have to do that job to the best of your ability, and then deal with the situation. So I can't really recollect off my head so much exactly what competitions and all that I went through when I was under a certain personal duress at the moment. But I'm sure that in a 22-year career, there were some moments which were difficult to absorb.
But
there
you
were moments
continue.
when there were also moments when I was very ill. I think I was sick, medically very sick in some competitions, but I still competed and continued to compete. And funnily enough, even did well in those competitions, because you just do not have the brain capacity to overthink. You just go and do what's needed, and sometimes that is the best mind frame that you have to be in, because you know that your mind is your body and mind is pretty well primed. And then you just have to, without thinking, because you just don't have the energy to think because you're so sick, and you just have to go and do what you have to do.
So my next question, I play a lot of golf, and in golf, that's the only sport where the ball is stationary, but you may not be able to connect the ball because, of the technique. I'm sure something similar must be part of your air rifle shooting. Is it all about technique? Because finally the phrase "nazar hati to durghatna ghati" is an ideal phrase for a sport like yours.
I think it is a lot to do with technique, but I think it is more than anything, it is about finding that harmony and that balance between mind and body. It is finding that synchronization between mind and body. Often you say that, many people say that shooting is a very mental sport. And I differ with that, because actually shooting is also a very physical sport, because we require a great amount of stillness, stillness of both mind and stillness of both body. We have just no margin to move, and the human body is actually not built for that. The human body is actually built to move, and in order to achieve that stillness actually requires a great amount of physical effort to keep absolutely still. So I think it really is that balance between mind and body, and when you're able to find that harmony between mind and body, that is when you end up performing to the best of your capability.
Sure. So that's my next question. Even in golf, we are told that you should keep your head down. So something similar, you should keep your arms or your hands steady, etc. At the same time, we are told that you should have no negative thoughts at the time while connecting the ball. I'm sure something similar must be. You cannot have negativity around you or negative thoughts when you are trying to compete at such a event like Olympics or Commonwealth or any other events also. So is that how do you manage to do that Zen like calmness? Do you do a lot of yoga, meditation and all that to achieve that? Or how do you manage to move away from that negative thoughts during that period?
Well, I think it is a myth. I think what theory that you are telling me has often been told to me as well. I was never able to achieve it. I think having negative thoughts when you want something very badly is a very natural phenomena to occur. You will have some degree of doubt. You will have certain negative thoughts which will come into play. The reality of the matter is that you have to focus to really remain in the moment. If a negative thought comes, you have to process it quickly. You have to accept it, and then you have to go back into the moment. And again, you have to really practice living in the moment, and that living in the moment cannot just be achieved whenever you're playing the game of golf or whenever I'm shooting. It can only be achieved when you make it a way of life. That mindfulness that is required to perform well has to be there in all aspects of your life. Whether you're eating a meal, then when you're eating your meal, focus on the meal, enjoy the meal, rather than thinking of 50 different things at the same time. So it is a way of life that you have to practice outside your career where you want to use it the most as well. When you start to make it a way of life, I think the chances of you achieving that focus and concentration required, and that mind frame that is needed, and that quietness of space that is needed without negative thoughts, you will just be able to achieve it. The chances of success will be much more. But again, a sporting competition is a long time. Our minds are always changing. Our things are always changing. And there will be a moment where you will have a negative thought or two. It is very natural. We are human beings. We are We are not robots. Let's just acknowledge that. And we have to find a way to work with these circumstances rather than trying to find a fairy tale scenario. This is a fairy tale scenario that we're looking at. The negative thought will never come. It's just not realistic. It sounds very good. It sounds.
The reason why I asked you, Abhinav, is that a lot of our viewers today are mutual fund distributors also. So we are surrounded by a lot of negative news constantly. Is it a regulatory changes or market related changes, etc.? How do they feel? Because they get carried away with this negativity and they lose their focus on concentrating on their ultimate goal of managing the investors' emotions and their wealth management. So what is your advice to MFD community in terms of why they should not be surrounded by negativity and how should they get out of it?
I think you have to cut the noise. Of course, you have to be sometimes, especially yours, you have to be aware of what sometimes rumor mongering is as well, but you cannot get carried away by it, I think. And you have to, I think, be sensible at it and let it not dictate your way of thinking. I mean, I think these are sometimes we start to presume a lot of things which necessarily might not be reality. And I think one has to stay away from it. One has to try and stick with facts and stick with data and then stick with what is true. And you have to focus on again, the process of what you are doing. When I was competing against many people in an Olympic Games or in a World Championship, I could not be focused on what they are doing. I had to focus on what I had to do and what I had, what the job I had.
What was in your control rather than what is not in your control.
Absolutely.
So now tell me the joys of stretching your limit, because you are a living example of going way, way beyond your boundaries. So what according to you is excellence and how did you achieve this?
I think excellence to me is really pushing yourself every single day. The Olympic Games come once in 4 years, but for me as an athlete, the Olympic Games came every day. Wow. I had to push myself every single day with a sense of integrity and a sense of honesty. I'm often asked about my favorite moment in sport, many I could easily give. My favorite moment in my sport career was standing on the Olympic podium, etc., etc. But my favorite moment of my sporting career came one training day when nobody was watching me. It was the 31st of December, very cold, and I had a physical trainer from Australia who was very strict and he was mean, and I had to do 100 sit-ups. At sit-up 95, he miscounted and said that you're done for the day. And well done, good end to the year, you did a good job. And I said back to him, no, I have 5 more to go. And it was just that honesty of purpose and that honesty of thought and that clarity of my goal to train and to do the best that I can with all integrity and honesty was something which was very, very fulfilling and which was something which was very, very internally rewarding to me. And I think that is something everybody
finally,
can
nobody would have even known about your 5 sit-ups not done, but it was for your own personal, so you can't fool your own self. So that's the way you have to look at life altogether. Now, they say that you can judge a character of a person through the sporting arena, be it in golf, be it anywhere else. So how do you achieve this in terms of the personal space where you will not get swayed by anything and everything just to achieve that goal? Finally, what are the best practices as far as you are concerned, either in life or in sports also?
Can you elaborate that question a little bit, because it got glitched a little bit? I didn't
Sure.
get it.
So what my question was that many want to achieve at any cost they want to win, especially in the sporting arena, and that's where you actually come to know the true character of a person. So what according to you are the best practices in sports so that you don't get carried away like this, and in personal life also?
Well, again, I think integrity is something which is very important. Sport is a great teacher because sports are bound by rules, and sport teaches you how to follow the rules. So I'm a great propagator of spreading sport to young people, because there are so many great lessons that sport teaches you. It teaches you to follow certain rules and stick within certain boundaries. And that is what was taught to me. And that is how I led my whole sporting career, and continue to do it in professional and personal life, is to be honest, have your heart in the right place, do things with complete amount of integrity. The shortest way to success, and everybody is looking for shortcuts, right? The shortest way to success is hard work, and you basically just have to work hard, push yourself to the limits every day, and that is the only shortcut that you will have to success.
Amazing shortcuts. I think this is the first time I'm hearing the shortest way to success is hard work. A great line. I think I'll use this line in my lectures also going forward, Abhinav. It is widely stated that human race is like crabs. They try to pull each other down instead of just to reach on the top. Just a take off from the last question only. So have you faced such incidents in your own sporting career? And why do you think team effort is more important than individual goals? Because finally, we have to empower each other. As I said, Indra Nui had made 3 life lessons, and I really like those 3 life lessons, and I like to repeat them also. Is be a lifelong student, be passionate about what you do, and empower others who are around you. So what, according to you, is team effort, and how much role has that played in your career?
Well, again, I think although I was in an individual sport, I had
Exactly.
a complete team. I had a complete team around me, and I think as I said, that for me, one of the most important things in creating that team was that I had to find positive people, because I myself was a very realistic person, bordered on negativity almost. But it was so very important to surround myself with positive people who believed in me, because there were days when I felt hopeless. There were days when I failed very badly, but when I felt hopeless, my team continued to see a lot of hope in me. They were great believers in me, and in my hard work. And I think it is very important to build that right team with that right energy, and surround yourself with like-minded people, with people who will do anything to for good times and in bad. That is something which is very important. And you have to work with people. I gave a few examples early on with that coach of mine who I did not really who did not work with. But at the point of time, I had a big entourage and 9 people who I was working with at the same time, and I had to somehow become a manager of sorts, because I was the athlete, but I also had to deal with 9 minds. And sometimes these 9 people and these 9 human beings did not really get along with each other. So I had to really work to sometimes set schedules when some of them who did not get along will not make eye to eye. But I had to keep them together. I had to keep the flock together. I knew that each one was there to support me, and each one was there to work on me. And I had to find a way to get the best out of them. Each one did not always, one person did not have the answers to everything.
But did that drain you to manage 9 people, 9 egos, 9 emotions? Did that drain you instead of concentrating on your own, focus of?
Well, it was something that I had to gauge. I think yes, it took a little bit of energy, knowledge, and the positive aspects that I gained from 9 people who were working on different elements of my sporting distance. So there was a physiotherapist, there was a chiropractor, there was a coach, there was a mental trainer. So they were working on different areas of my performance, and each one brought some value to the table. And I had the job to bring the best out of that knowledge and grasp what I needed to do. I was hungry. I was thirsty for this knowledge, and it was.
So it was your own need also which
left to me.
goaded you to keep this flock together.
Absolutely, because again, I've remained a very open-minded athlete, always willing to learn, always willing to hear different thought processes, always looking towards the science of it, always looking for reasoning. When a certain coach told me something, I never ever took it on face value. And this was sometimes very hard for my coaches, because sometimes in sport, you just have to take things on face value. I always questioned them. I always prodded them. And when they did come up with the right answers, and they did try to convince me, then I was all in. I truly believed in them. But it was about finding that, building that relationship of trust amongst these people, I think, was the most critical thing in the whole thing. Because I had to then, there was a point of time where I had to let go of my critical faculty and trust them wholeheartedly. And there comes a time in sporting performance when you have to do that. When I go and compete in an Olympic final, I cannot be suddenly start to critique or start to doubt what they're saying. And that is a time to try and let go, and try and take that leap of faith. And that could only be achieved when that degree of trust was built between these individuals.
Excellent. So Abhinav, you were really fortunate that you had your own private shooting range, but not many athletes in our country have many government programs or part of any training sessions, etc. You have started Abhinav Bindra Foundation just for that reason, and not only concentrating on air rifle shooting, but other sports also. If you wish to say something about your own foundation,
yeah.
how is it reaching out to athletes
So
from
firstly, I'd like
different
to.
walks of...
So firstly, I'd like to acknowledge that a lot of work is being done in sport now. In the last couple of years, there is much more. The government is making sport a priority aspect, just because I think our demographic is so young, and sport is important to the young people, and you cannot no longer ignore it. So it is prioritizing. Our infrastructure is improving. My personal out Indian sport after my retirement is primarily through the Abhinav Bindra Foundation. At the foundation, we have 3 pillars on what we work at. The first pillar is of intervention, where we build these centers, high performance centers, which bring in cutting edge sports science and technology into athletes training and preparedness, which work on areas of performance enhancement, injury prevention, and injury management. We give out a scholarship program in our centers, which is called the STEAM Scholarship Program, STEAM standing for Science, Technology, Engineering, Analytics, and Medicine. And we try and incorporate all of that. And my primary outreach to this intervention is for grassroots level athletes. So I really would like to young athletes who are just starting out, because I do believe that is the time at that grassroots is where the most amount of effort and support is needed, because they need to start right. They need to build that strong foundation. And if they miss out on those formative years properly, things don't go so well. That is the number one thing. Number two is education. So it is not just about training athletes, but it is also about creating the ecosystem which surrounds Indian sport. We recently launched a sports medicine and research institute, where we are starting to offer courses in physiotherapy. In fact, the course just started today. Again, trying to bring in global best practice, bring in a top-class faculty from India and abroad, and bring in basically the best global practice into this aspect as well. The second aspect of our education, a lot has been talked about administration in sport. You often hear of stories about poor administration and not great governance in sporting bodies. So we launched a program with partnership with another foundation, which is the EMS Foundation, and the University of Loughborough, which is considered the world's best sports university, to work on a program which will empower our sports administrators, again, bringing in knowledge, bringing in international faculty from the most successful Olympic committees and Olympic nations and the brightest minds from across the world, to tell our administrators and teach our administrators and empower them with, again, global best practice on how to administer high performance sport. I think that was, we started a course which was very successful, the first course, and we're going to go ahead on it. The third element of education we are working very closely is athlete mental health. Mental health is a very stigmatized subject in society. Yes. And in athletes in particular, it is even more stigmatized, because there's a myth around athletes that athletes are strong and they have to be mentally very strong. But at the end of the day, athletes are human beings first, and then they become an athlete. and their human well-being has to be at the heart and center of performance. So we're doing a lot of work currently on advocacy and also bringing in mechanisms on how to create psychologically safe environments for athletes. That is the number 3 element of education. The last element of our foundation is doing work for using sport. And we are currently doing a project which I'm particularly proud of. It is in collaboration with a former rival of mine, now a very good friend. He's a 3-time Olympic champion from Italy, Niccolò Campriani. And, you know, both of us were very touched and by the whole refugee cause, because the Rio Olympic Games saw the first ever international refugee team take part at the Olympic Games. These are people who've been through immense hardship in life, have no national affiliation, and are using sport to bring meaning to their life again. So Niccolò is based out of Switzerland. He works for the International Olympic Committee, and we started a program with a selection process through 25 refugees, and we picked 3 refugees, and we are attempting to make them athletes in the sport of shooting. They're already athletes, and we hope that they will qualify to be part of the international refugee team at the Olympic Games in Tokyo, which will now be held this year in July.
Which are the other
this is the work.
So which are the other sports arena which you are sponsoring through your foundations besides air rifle shooting?
No, air rifle is just shooting is just one element. We work with 20, 30, all Olympics, all sports. I mean, we have badminton players, we have from all sports, we have hockey players, every sport. So sports science is something which is across the board. It is not
this is based out of Chandigarh?
The sport of shooting. So
this is based out
so
of
our
Chandigarh?
centers are based. Our centers, we have about, we have 5 centers. A big center in Bhubaneswar in Orissa. We have a center in Bangalore out of the Padukone Dravid Center of Sports Excellence. We have a center in Mohali. We have a center in Delhi. We have a center in Pune. So it is widespread and
amazing work. What, according to you, your athlete mindset has helped you in terms of your entrepreneurship? Is there any difference?
Again, it is again, it is about living the journey. It is about the process. It is about hard work. It is about integrity, and it is about honesty. And that's what you continue to do every day. And I'm sure when you have that purpose in mind, you will succeed. And that is exactly what I try and bring in my life now.
1% out of 130 crores winning a gold Olympic medal. Can you relive that moment for us?
Well, again, it was a great moment for me. It was the thrill of my life. It was a great goal that I achieved. Very fulfilling, I would say, very fulfilling moment. But again, it's not just about that moment. What I said early on, it was not the moment of winning that gold medal what I cherish most. It is the person that I became in the process of winning that gold medal, which matters.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Abhinav, for coming on our show. It was absolute pleasure and an honor. Let's see if we have any questions from the audience, if we can take them up. Thank you. Dharam sir?
Ashish, you can we can ask take 2 or 3 questions. We have little time left with us. So yes. If anybody has any questions, they may please put in the chat box.
First of all, while we get the questions, I must thank Mr. Bindra for coming and sharing his experiences with us. And as a student, I have grown up reading about Mr. Bindra. We used to talk about him in our school essays, and we used to talk about him in various competitions as people in the Indian landscape who have profoundly impacted how students look at sports and how they have impacted the mentality of the students to win something and to do something for our nation as well. And also I must thank you for speaking about self-confidence and also bringing the subject of mental health in this conversation. And now we also have our first question, which is, how do you manage stress?
Well, I never managed to manage stress so well, but what I said was that I try to manage stress by accepting it, that it exists, and not resisting it. When you're under pressure, it's not a feeling. But the moment you accept it, that okay, I am under pressure, it just opens up your mind rather than resisting this feeling of pressure, which is uncomfortable. The moment you accept it, it just opens up your mind and it allows you to focus on what you're supposed to focus on. It allows you to stay in the moment. It allows you to focus on the process. And the moment you start to do that, you start getting start focusing on what you're supposed to do, and that eases it a little bit. But it is about that acceptance, I think, is very, very important.
So the acceptance and the acknowledgement that something is existing, it is going to affect me, and then working along with it. Yes,
you have to learn to. You have to like COVID. You have to learn to coexist with it.
Classic example is 2020.
2020. Yes. And what is a message that you would want to give to the new generation?
Again, it is about hard work. It is about perseverance. Be determined to your goals. Do not give up. Be answerable to yourself. I think that is the most important thing. If you're answerable to yourself and you gain your self-respect, what I talked about earlier on, I think you will be winners.
Okay. There is also one rather interesting question that actually imbibes on two parts that you mentioned in your session today. There are two schools of thoughts. One is outcome oriented, and the other says that it is process oriented. So whereas you spoke about the process oriented part, but you also spoke about something called realism, to accept that both types of things exist, that positive and negative exist. So our member is asking that how can you achieve balance between these two schools of thoughts in life?
Well, of course, we want outcomes. If you think that I did not want a gold medal, of course I wanted a gold medal. But how was I going to achieve that gold medal? How are you going to gain that? How are you going to get the outcome that what you need? You can't just be totally focused on it, and you can't just keep thinking about gold medal, and gold medal will come to you. You can only do it by being immersed in the process and immersed into the skill of performance when it is needed, and that will eventually lead you to win that gold medal. So it is about putting in the work, what is required. It is about learning to stay in the moment. Outcomes. Of course, we want outcomes. You want to make tons of money. Everybody does want success. All of that is needed, but in order to achieve that, you have to really get stuck into actually doing it, and you can only actually do it when you get immersed in the process of doing what you're supposed to do. And if you are continuously going to have outcome related thoughts, it is only going to just be a distraction.
No, you rightly pointed out. Abhinav, you rightly pointed out during the surgery period, you had to convert your long-term goal into short-term goals, achieve that step by step, and then come out on top, because that's again a process-driven approach only. Because you can't, with that back problem, you could not have thought of only winning gold and achieving pinnacles in your own career. So you have to convert and you have to adapt based on the circumstances which will be changing on a day-to-day basis. Any other questions?
Yes, there is one question. Since we are sitting in the community of mutual fund distributors, there is a question which says that how does Abhinav look at mutual fund as an investment avenue?
I do invest in them, but I'm not the right person to give advice on them. MisterBond will be the most suited person to give it. But I do hope that they work out for me. I think that is important. But I'm invested, so I do. I'm riding my luck on them, but it is about getting in at the right time, but more importantly, getting out at the right time.
Absolutely. Rightly said. Exit strategy more important than entry strategy, or both are important actually. Great, Abhinav. Thank you so much for coming on Next Level MisterBond Pathshala. As I said, really a privilege and an honor. Dharam sir, if you would wish to summarize, please.
Yes, thank you again. Just like we started this program with so much of enthusiasm, I think we've enjoyed every moment of this. It's once in a lifetime that you get a chance to be with an Olympic gold medalist for an hour. So it's a moment, it's an hour for us to cherish. Thank you, Abhinav, for being with us, and it's really been an honor. And one of the things we can be proud about the Pathshala, that we could bring you and you could address all our members. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. All the best.
Swami there, then I would like to invite Swami to put in a few words if he's there. Otherwise,
Yeah, so Abhinav, it was wonderful session. Like, the discipline that you follow in sports, that, our mutual fund advisors, distributors, even if they follow the same kind of discipline in their profession, and also help their clients to follow the discipline that you have explained throughout the session, we can win any game, whether it's a life game, money game, wealth game, health game, any game we can win, and that you have demonstrated throughout your session in this discussion. So thank you so much. So on behalf of Next Level Education and Financial, MisterBond Financial Pathshala, and we are lucky to have you here, and it was a great session, and members have taken a lot of learnings and a lot of insights and a lot of inspiration from your session. So thank you so much once again.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
yes, Ashish, you can.
Yeah, so before we get into friends, there are a couple of many new people are joining today's Pathshala, so you may not be knowing what exactly Pathshala is all about. So if you're interested to know more about Pathshala, what is Pathshala, and how you can be part of the Pathshala and be part of this your own school, Pathshala school, and come and learn every Saturday here. So if you are interested to know more about Pathshala, please get in touch with